All right, welcome in, ladies and gentlemen. Let's get right into it. And as always, for reviews like this, spoilers ahead. So, Rebel Moon. It is the grimdark, magical world of Dune in the iRobot Spartacus Star Wars Halo movie that we never knew we didn't want. Yeah, it makes a lot of references and pays a lot of weird homage to a ton of different science fiction movies and novels, and it's a lot. It is a lot, man. So this movie has a ton of hype built up around it. Before it came out on Netflix, right? And for a few good reasons. Now, Zach Snyder had approached Disney wanting to do a R-rated Star Wars movie. He wanted to do a really gritty and dark Star Wars movie, but Disney told him no. So he reworked the script, threw some new skins on it, and gave us Rebel Moon Part 1. And it stunk. It was so terribly disappointing. It just it's like the new kid on the basketball team is about to score his first shot and he just airballs it. Like, you feel confident about this kid. He's talking a big game. You're like, all right, I picked this guy to be on my team, and you know we're gonna win. But he just sucks, man. And I thought I was really gonna like this movie, considering that film critics and reviewer sites all said that it was awful. Now, their views often conflict with the wider audience, who all usually have an opposite take on things for the most part, opposite the major film critics. So I thought, okay, if these guys don't like it, I'll probably really enjoy it. Because we generally have a lot of very opposite feelings about a lot of movies. That was very much not the case with this film. It was dead on how the reviewers took this film. It felt so damn rushed and hurried along in several senses. The backstories were rushed. We get a lot of characters in this movie, and we get backstories on everybody. The pacing was rushed. The action in a lot of the action scenes, and there's plenty of it. There's a ton of action in this movie. And the action is not, it's not really there to give us the quote unquote action parts of the movie. It's there to give us pretty shots. It's there to give us, like, if you were to, I can see the storyboard room now. Like they have all of these shots on a pin board in the in the writer room, and I can see the drawings, like the woman fighting the giant spider monster lady, the Native American guy taming the hippogriff. Like I can see all of it. Like it's some brilliant concepts, and it makes for a lot of really pretty shots. But and it's not a long movie. It's only a 2-hour movie. And basically what the whole movie is this big sci-fi hodgepodge of that one Rick and Morty episode where Rick gathers up a team of thieves to pull off a big heist, and as soon as they're all gathered, he just dips and he deflates this big expectation and buildup that we have gathering all of these interesting and cool looking characters. It's basically that. Because that's the plot of this movie. That's what the main character does. And there's a ton of sci-fi influences scattered around like sprinkles on a souffle that don't belong because you don't put sprinkles on a souffle. So the main character, we have less of a Mary Sue with this main character. Her name is Cora. And Cora was this elite soldier. She was taken from her family that the Empire kills. She was taken as a child, and she was kind of raised by this main big bad of the universe, Belisarius. And this is one of the big references. One of the first really big references, aside from, the opening shot being of a farm girl with a sun setting in the background, and we get the opening shot as a big Star Wars reference, and then the next big reference is Warhammer 40K. So Belisarius is a clear callback to Belisarius Cawl, who is one of the leaders of the Adeptus Mechanicus for the Imperium of Man in Warhammer 40K. And that's another big tie-in, as the Empire's military in Rebel Moon is called the Imperium. So, yeah, there's a lot of this scattered throughout the movie. A lot of these tie-ins, a lot of these, well, not tie-ins, but homages and nods and straight up rip-offs from other things like Star Wars and Warhammer. So yeah, we get Belisarius Cawl, the Imperium of Man, the Imperium. You get it. We also later on get these cult looking guys who very much look like Adeptus Mechanicus acolytes or scientists, and they're working on the main antagonist of the movie, and they send his mind to meet with Belisarius by using this weird science that looks like it looks like it was body horror science pulled straight out of the 40K books. And it looks really cool, and I don't have much of a gripe with it, especially because we haven't gotten our 40K live action series just yet. But there are inspirations and there are straight up ripoffs. And yeah, this is very much a ripoff, but I don't mind it too much, because we haven't gotten live action 40K yet. It's coming. I don't know when, but it is, and I'm super excited for it. It's also kind of helping push the not in the limelight body horror tech envelope a bit, and we've gotten that with a few less well-known sci-fi franchises and properties, but it's not something that you see a lot of nowadays, especially because we don't get too much mainstream science fiction anymore. It's mostly comic book films and Barbie movies, but I digress. So yeah, cult looking guys straight up out of the Adeptus Mechanicus. It's pretty fun. I enjoyed that bit of the movie. So we have the main character, Cora. She's kind of this bland person. And again, this is another bit of the movie I don't mind too much, because we've had bland characters before in other major movies that we are meant to kind of imprint ourselves onto and let them carry us in through the events of the film. Perfect example is Neo from The Matrix, because Keanu Reeves is so bland and flavorless as Neo, but it's one of the coolest movies, and it's got this groundbreaking concept and story that still captures audiences for plenty of good reason. Now, Cora fights off the Imperial Guard that comes to mess with the villagers that she's made a life with since she deserted her military post. And she was kind of raised to be this elite Halo Spartan kind of soldier. And she's meant to protect the Imperial family, but then her love interest dies, and she's like, nah, I'm a bounce. And to give the movie some real credit for the tipping point scene for Cora, it's a scene where she helps this farm girl that the Imperial soldiers are straight up just about to rape. They get and this is where I give the movie some props for its grit, because they get handsy and they pull her into this barn, kicking and screaming and everything. It's not like they're doing this off camera. It's creepy. And Spartan Cora comes in and kills everybody with the help of the Anthony Hopkins iRobot that runs off and becomes king of the deer or something. I don't know. He's wearing deer antlers like a crown, and he holds up a spear at the closing shot of the film. I mean, it's cool as hell, and it makes me wish the movie was more about him than anything. So that's really the inciting incident of this film, is Cora protecting the village and this village girl, killing the soldiers, and now she's like, okay, well, the Imperium is going to come back, and they're going to see their dead guys, and they're going to kill everybody, so we have to figure out how to fight and defend the village. So she runs off with one of the villagers to gather up some warriors to help defend the village. And they even have a timetable. They have 10 weeks with the main villain of the movie, Admiral Atticus Noble. And he's going to come back with his ship and take everything the village has, and he's going to kill them for killing his men. Which presents us with the first major plot hole of the movie for me, with Cora and her quest. Because the bad guy is coming back with a capital ship that has guns. What good does gathering up soldiers do? I mean, you should be out collecting ships, right? Get a bunch of fighters and bombers and a few frigates, maybe something to fight a spaceship that can shoot an army on the ground into rubble. Like it doesn't matter how many soldiers that you collect. They're all going to be cannon fodder if your enemy shows up with a battle cruiser. I mean, this should have prompted a rush to find ships to fight a big space battle. Like that would have been great. Like the movie tries to give us all of these little instances instead where it's meet character, there's a conflict, immediate payoff. And they rinse and repeat that for a good 3 or 4 characters that Cora picks up along the way to join her merry band of freedom fighters. But I mean, why? Like, okay, you know it's a plot hole when you ask the movie the simple question, hey, what happens to the main characters when they succeed? Do the bad guys lose? If the answer is a resounding no, because all the bad guys need to do is stay in their ship and rain down hellfire, then how is this not a plot hole? Especially if the main character used to work for the same military she knows is gunning for them. She knows how they operate. She knows that they'll come back and slaughter everybody with extreme prejudice, and she knows the kind of firepower that their damn ships are packing. So, what's the deal, man? Like, this makes no sense. And, I mean, the only reason that the rabble of good guy warriors that Korra manages to scrape together come through and win at all is because they're fighting on the ground. They're fighting in a spaceport, face to face, for the most part, with their enemy. And, I mean, it's not like any of them get off scot-free. I mean, they lose one of the main guys, and a bunch of their freedom fighters get killed, and they get betrayed by, ironically, by the only guy that has a damn spaceship. You know, for a movie that rips off a lot of sci-fi franchises, you think there'd be way more spaceships. I don't get it. And the characters that Korra manages to go around collecting are pretty cool, and they feel like they're straight out of a D&D campaign, and I really dig that. As a big D&D fan myself. I mean, you got this one guy who's this famous general who is now this disgraced drunkard fighting in arenas. There's a woman who's a cyborg samurai that wears this witch hat, and she's got this movie's version of lightsabers, and she kills this big scary spider lady to save a kid. One guy's this Native American looking prince guy who he looks like one of the wolf guys from Twilight. And he's a slave to this space rancher that's got this Harry Potter hippogriff looking creature. I mean, they look exactly alike. Both he and the werewolves and the hippogriff and this griffin looking thing. I mean, they even bow to each other. It's not like, if you're going to copy homework, fudge it a little bit more so it doesn't look like my homework. You know what I mean? Korra also gets this rebel leader to join her, and they pull a handful of freedom fighters who really give off this Viking Fremen vibe from Dune. I mean, it's the only difference is the reliance on water and the movie's lighting scheme. God, and that brings me into another big issue that I had with this movie. It's how it was made. The cinematography looked awful. Like, something was really wrong when the shots are all out of focus, especially in like the first third of the movie. The audio is kind of garbled at certain spots. Like, there's a lot of people that have different accents, and that kind of hurt the audio quality in some places too. Like, I had to turn on subtitles, and I don't use subtitles much. It was a big disservice to the audience, I think. Like I said, it felt really rushed It felt like they took 3 takes and they just chose the less shitty of the takes. I think they needed to spend a lot more time on this movie. I mean, there are some beautiful bits that are really captivating and fun. The coolest to me were with the Anthony Hopkins robot. But if I come away from your film and my favorite bits were of a character that was in the movie maybe a grand total of 10 minutes, then something's really wrong with how your movie was made. Because I want to get all of what I thought was wrong with the film out of the way. Here's a few more things. Another plot hole, for example, and this kind of it just tears the movie in half. Cora and the gang get betrayed by the space Irish version of Jack Teller from Sons of Anarchy. And he makes a deal with this space orc to sell out Cora and all of the fugitives that are wanted by the Imperium, that they spend a second third of the film going around and collecting, right? And he agrees to do this because he's made a deal with this orc to make a deal with the Imperium to sell out all of these wanted fugitives, right? The problem is, we clearly see Jack making this deal with this space orc before he knows who Cora even is or who she's looking for. And it's not like you can explain this away. The film very astutely makes us aware of the relationship that Space Jack and the orc have before Cora and the villager get into a bar brawl with a fat space slug pig guy and his merry band of marauders. And all throughout the movie, we don't see Jack making any kind of, suspicious moves or anything. He doesn't talk to anybody. He doesn't call the space orc. And he and the orc are the only ones to make a deal with the Imperium, and that's how they ambush the heroes at the docks at the end of the movie. So, I mean, how? It's super confusing. Especially since they condensed all of this into 2 hours, and it's less than that really, because you got your opening and get your end credits. It's like an hour 45 minutes. I mean, you're really left to fill this major plot hole that's a bit of a stretch. I mean, you could say that Space Jack was in contact with the orc, and but why not show us a little of that, like make him suspicious or too trusting, or give us some more buildup of his character so that when he does end up betraying Cora, there's more of an impact or more of a sting to it. I mean, we get some backstory on him, and I mean, the Imperium killed his people and such, and he's learned to work with them out of fear and whatnot, but that's kind of what everyone else is doing at the same time, save, of course, for the Viking Dune Fremen freedom people. But so his motivation is survival. That's basically what everybody else is doing too, dude. Like, it's oh my. I mean, it's not like the Atticus Noble guy is your brother or your cousin or something. Like, there's no big twist. Like, oh no, the Irish accented outlaw guy betrayed us. Okay, like, there's no big letdown here. Of course he did. all in all, I think it's really easy for me to say that this movie is clearly a dud. And it's sad because I so wanted it to work. I didn't get into the hype of this movie because it was directed by Zach Snyder. Like, I could give two wooden pennies about Zach Snyder. I don't care for him at all. I don't care about most directors at all either. I was hype because it was this big sci-fi movie. It was a rewrite of a Star Wars spinoff. It had a great cast of characters, played by a bunch of really cool actors, a lot of whom I really enjoy in a ton of other things. And I'm really upset still about them basically wasting the use of their best actor, Anthony Hopkins, who was the voice of the robot, and he's on screen for 10 minutes. Like, it's like the live action Beauty and the Beast movie. They got Audra McDonald, right? One of the best voices on Broadway. And they have Emma Watson singing more than she does. I think McDonald sings maybe 2 bars of music and that's it. But it made me so mad. It doesn't make any sense at all. But why not use your best tools to craft your story? It's so disappointing when creatives do that. And I also felt like there were way too many characters in this film. Like, too many prominent characters. If you're going to have 2 parts, spread them out. Like, they try to do way too much in a movie that is not very long at all. I'd have dwindled it down to Cora needing to find General Titus, use him to maybe rally some errant military faction, that has some damn spaceships, and use them to help defend the villagers. Maybe she uses her past as this elite Imperium soldier to kind of trauma bond with him. And they have, maybe they develop this sort of mentor apprentice relationship, and she could like look up to him as this, because he's described in the movie as a military genius, right? So that would make a ton of sense. And maybe he could be the Obi-Wan Kenobi stand-in, right? This old drunken hermit that's just kind of off in the middle of nowhere, and he's wanted by the Empire. Like, it's a great stand-in. I mean, that would have freed us up to let the movie take its time, right? It gives us more time investing in the characters instead of giving us, expedition dumps and then hurrying us along to the next world or the next scene or whatever every 5 minutes. And I can really appreciate the effort and the homage that went into making this movie. I really can, because it's clearly got a ton of influence, and you can tell Snyder's a fan of a lot of really big sci-fi franchise stuff that's got a lot of really rich lore and backstory, and the influence is pretty obvious to people like me who are huge science fiction nerds. But this movie should be able to stand on its own, right? It's got another part coming. If Snyder really wanted to make a Star Wars spinoff, maybe he should have studied Star Wars more, because A New Hope does work on its own. It can be a standalone film. We don't need the next 2 installments. They don't need to come along to fix anything. or make up for wasted characters or backstory. Lucas wrote the film script with that in mind. He didn't know he was going to get a second shot at telling his story, so he did the smart thing and he gave us a perfect one-shot story that worked by itself. And yeah, I know the second part was greenlit along with the first at the same time, and Snyder's spreading things out, but should that excuse this poor quality of a movie? I think not. And I can only hope for better from Netflix and Snyder in the future. And, well, you know, also I could say screw it and just wait for Henry Cavill's Warhammer 40k live action series on Amazon Prime. Then maybe I'll be happy. Who knows? But for now, live long and prosper, my friends, and may the Force be with us all.